As an HVAC technician, one of the most important tools that you have in your tool bag is your meter. I was told by a great service technician one time that a meter is like your Bible. Well, if you're looking for a great meter that won't break the bank, you need to check out the ACD 14 Pro from Amp Probe. The ACD 14 Pro is a compact-sized clamp meter with all the features needed for an HVAC technician. It is an HVAC-based meter. It has a large dual display where you can read voltage and amperage simultaneously. For more information, visit www.ampprobe.com. The aluminum body of the Yellowjacket combo electric and manual flaring tool makes it half the weight of traditional steel designs. The tool comes with a handle for manual flaring, but for super fast flaring, remove the manual handle and replace it with an electric drill drive. For accuracy, the side handle locks movement of the yoke assembly during flaring, and the built-in slide gauge allows you to easily meet the desired flare sizes without the guesswork. A built-in clutch release prevents over-torquing, and the hardened, polished, eccentric cone with a 45-degree flare produces a rolling action for uniform flare walls without galling in 1/4 inch to 3/4 inch outside diameter tubing. For more information, visit yellowjacket.com. You're listening to the HVAC After Dark podcast with John Israel and Gil Cavey. Welcome back to HVAC After Dark. I'm John Israel alongside Gil Cavey. How's it going, Gil?
I'm good, buddy. Glad to be here. Got a good one today.
Yes, we do. And sitting alongside us today is a man that needs no introduction, but it's Mr. John Pastorello of Refrigeration Technologies. John, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your Saturday morning to join us here.
I've been looking forward to doing this.
As have we. It's an honor to talk to you. I've been using, like I told you all before we started recording, I've been using Big Blu since I started in this. I started in this trade when I was a kid with my father. And like I told you, my father would, he'd tell all the guys and stuff, look, when y'all go to the supply house and you run out of this, get that. And then the soap bubbles. I remember it plain as day. He would say, don't buy anything but Big Blu. That's it. Big Blu only for your soap bubbles.
He taught you well, for sure.
Yes, he did. Now, as far as Nylog, I didn't discover Nylog until I started the YouTube thing. I'll be honest with you. Once I got on YouTube, that's how I got introduced to Nylog, which I love now. But I'd like you to tell us, about these products, like with Big Blu. I mean, what do you do? Why is Big Blu, and it is better than the rest, trust me, I know from experience, but what is it about Big Blu?
Well, it's actually just a superior foaming compound that far exceeds what other leak detectors can produce. There's just no really good technology in the competitive products that we have found. I think they're basically formulating around price, and they use a minimal amount of material to get the desired effect. They just really don't put any research into developing good leak detectors, and I don't think they really put in the research to fine-tuning their leak detectors or looking for better materials that would produce better foam, longer lasting foam. I mean, I came out with Big Blu in '87, and it's gone through many, many upgrades. So, it's one of my biggest hobbies here is playing with bubbles and trying to make better bubbles, bigger bubbles, bubbles that last longer, and become pretty popular in the bubble world to where I've been able to. I've had two different toy companies come to me and help me reformulate their toy bubbles.
Really?
Yeah. So I've done reformulated toy bubbles for a couple companies out there that were having problems or just wanted a better product.
So would you say that Big Blue is your baby? That's like your thing in the company?
Yeah, it's what I play with 90% of the time. Because I'll tell you what, there's always new materials coming out, new foaming materials, and the such to enhance foam. And I try and stay on top of all that. And about 99% of all these new materials fail to produce any real improvement with my solution. But I hold out for that 1% that may help enhance products I already have. And that's what I do primarily here is I come up with a base formulation that performs well, and then strive to improve it. Just keep trying to improve it. It's really a fast moving area, especially in cleaning technology, with all the more environmentally preferred chemicals, which used to be very low performance chemicals, and now that they're coming out with more advanced cleaning type products, raw materials that improve cleaning performance and still be environmentally preferable.
Yeah, I know that's a big thing now. I know that you've talked about, I always use your regular Big Blue. I know you have the low temp, and we've had some guys in our group asking about it, but didn't you say that the low temp is not as good as far as like the viscosity or something? It's not as good as your regular Big Blue. You do have to take like some hits if you want that low temp stuff.
It's not that far off of Big Blue, regular Big Blue. The problem with the low temp is we use a lot of propylene glycol to make sure that the product doesn't freeze overnight on the guys' trucks, the guys that work up in the northern area, the Great Lakes area, Alaska, Canada. They don't want their product to freeze overnight. Propylene glycol is actually a defoamer. It actually cuts and kills foam. So I'm always looking to try and improve that. And we've got it pretty much to where it's maybe a notch below the regular Big Blue, but it's still, as far as a non-freezing type leak detector, it's hands over the best out there.
Well, then let me ask you this, John. I live in Maryland. That's where my company is, and we're not like cold, but we do get cold enough that you come out and all your products are frozen. If I stock the low, only the low temp in all my trucks, I mean, would I be doing a disservice, or should I keep like a little bit of both? Just use the low temp during the wintertime?
Well, the only really disadvantage is the low temp is like twice the price. So it's not a very economical product. And a lot of the people will just, spend the time to thaw out the product, regular Big Blue.
That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, if you're out there doing work and it's really cold out there, you might want to just keep a bottle of what we now call the Sub-Zero, just for those times when you need something that's still liquid and you don't have to defrost it, just for a matter of convenience.
Well, that definitely clears it up, because I'll just keep the regular Big Blue. We don't have it. You can thaw it out like you said, and especially for double the cost, I'll just keep the good stuff, or the regular Big Blue for now.
But it is good for the guys up north, because there was a guy in our group that, I don't know, he asked recommendations on soap bubbles, and somebody told him about Big Blue, but they said, you got to be careful because it freezes in your truck. And I explained to the guy that, that you had a Big Blue Sub-Zero. Is it Sub-Zero, right?
Yeah, that's what we call it now.
Okay. So he said he was going to check into that.
Good. Yeah, it's pretty widely available, especially at somewhere like a Johnstone or United. So he shouldn't have a problem finding it.
Right. You will not see Big Blue Sub-Zero in Louisiana. No need for that here.
No need for that at all. No need for it in California. In fact, when I first developed Big Blue back in 1987, we went to the ASHRAE show to demonstrate and introduce the product. And one of the, being from California, I didn't know that there were leak detectors back east that didn't freeze. And one of the biggest questions all the technicians had were, does it freeze? And I said, yeah, it's water-based. It's going to freeze. And, well, we can't use it. So I had to get to work on another version of Big Blue that didn't freeze, because, you're out there to provide a product that the customer wants.
John, I want to ask you something. And you don't have to say a competitor's name. You can just give a yes or no. Or, it's up to you however you want to answer it. Is there another bubble solution, leak detector bubble solution out there that comes close to being as good as Big Blue?
It all depends on what you're testing. If you're testing just like for natural gas, there's a product out there called Snoop. It's good for natural gas, but it isn't good for high pressure gases because it's such a thin film, watery type soap leak detector. And it's always been very popular with utility companies. That, produces pretty ample amount of foam. But for refrigeration, when you get into the higher pressures, it just runs off too fast and just doesn't hang around. But in fact, when I was looking at foam characteristics of different leak detectors out there in the beginning, back in the 80s, Snoop was our target. When I was able to double, almost triple the foam output, I knew I was on the right track. But you'll have a lot of people out there swear by their Snoop, not maybe in our industry, but industrial area.
Right. That's what I was going to say. I've never heard of Snoop.
I haven't either. I don't want to change topics, but I've heard you say something before that I wanted to ask you about when you were talking about your coil cleaner. Me and John are both big on the coil gun. I actually, I know it's relatively similar, but we both want to get one of your guns. When you were talking about how you clean a coil, and okay, we all talk about cleaning outdoor coils like, duh, we send apprentice out to do that. But there's actually a right and a wrong way to do it.
Foam cleaning is the best way to clean a coil because if you study how soil bonds to surfaces, applying a flat liquid, the detergent doesn't seem to hit all these different angles and all these bridges that soils tend to form on a surface. But with foam does such a more complete job of coverage and holding onto the surface longer. It removes more soil per application than a flat liquid. And I came out with the foam gun back in 1989, and I also developed with it basically a high foaming oven cleaner product I called it Carbonex, where we teamed up this non-acid high foaming coil cleaner, and we teamed it up with the foam gun, and we sold it kind of as a kit. And within a few years, after demonstrating it at different trade shows, all my competitors easily copied the process and sourced where I was getting the foam gun from and came out with their own version.
Well, and that's the sad part, because that's the one me and John have talked about. That's the one, and I won't say their name, but that's the one you see all over the place. And I'm never going to knock a company, but what makes us respect you so much in your products is, like we said before, the fact that you've been in the field and you actually manufacture, produce your own products. The company I'm thinking of that starts with an N and ends with an on, all they do is steal other people's technology and just remanufacture it. I mean, yeah, a product's a product, but I think about that kind of stuff when I'm, buying products for my company.
Yeah, well, the term for that is called Singapore trader. And what a Singapore trader does is They'll wait for some other company to go out there and develop the market on a particular product. And then the Singapore trader comes in and offers the same identical product and packages it along with this other array of products and basically says, you no longer have to buy from this small company. You can buy when you're purchasing from us and incorporate it into all our vast line of products. So that makes it much easier for the wholesaler because he only has to write one purchase order instead of two purchase orders.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what that company that Gil was talking about does. They manufacture, well, no, they buy a product and then they slap their name on it.
Exactly.
So, and unfortunately, that is the coil gun that we have, because like Gil said, they're everywhere. I mean, you walk in every supplier here. Unfortunately, I've never seen your gun in suppliers here, but I've seen just about all your other stuff. But your gun, your foam gun, is not in the suppliers here.
Yeah, because they're probably bundling it with a purchase from another, a competitor. And I think price wise, I think we're equivalent. It's just that, they've been doing that for years. So why switch?
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but you're right.
Yeah, I tell you, on that foam gun, we mark it up very minimally because the whole object of that foam gun is to get you to use our solution. The foam gun is kind of what we call a loss leader. It's the razor, but the money's with selling razor blades.
Well, I just me and John talked about it through my company. I just purchased a bunch of your coil cleaner that I restocked up. I bought one jug of it and really, really liked it. So now I bought I think it was a couple of cases of it to have in my shop.
And which one did you get, Gil?
I want to say is it orange?
It should be a little yellow, but yeah,
yellow.
When we first produce it, it comes out a bit orange, but then it settles into a nice bright yellow. Yeah, that's our Viper Heavy Duty or Viper HD.
Yeah, it works great.
Yeah. In fact, we just went through a battery of soil removal testing to where we were getting 88% soil removal, and now a new formulation that's been going in effect since the last month, we're up to 93.8 on soil removal. So, I continually strive to improve that product.
Well, I'm a little late bringing this up, but I guess I should have brought it up in the beginning, but I guess it doesn't matter. Tell us about AHR. How was it?
It was a great show. We was very busy to where we really didn't have a chance to break and take lunch. It was like, we were tag teaming. Okay, you go take lunch and go grab a salad somewhere and come back. We got a lot of attention because our booth, we got like a 30-foot booth, but our booth is kind of interactive to where we got this one big wheel that's stretching Nylog in a clockwise motion, and people walk by that and it just grabs their attention and they want to know what the hell is that. And so, that ropes them in. We bring them into the booth and explain, well, that's Nylog. It's a gasket thread sealant, stretches about 3 feet long. And then we're doing welding. We're showing a heat blocking putty. And every time we fire up a torch, and we use an acetylene torch because they're really loud. And so every time we fire up the torch, it may look like the aisles are empty, but once you fire up that torch and it just puts off a big sound, you have 10, 15 people congregating around seeing what you're doing with the torch. So, and then we set up a little condenser coil that you'd find on refrigeration. And we've got our little Viper aerosol product, and we're showing people how to use the pin spray on the aerosol product to get in between the coil fins and penetrate through the fins. Proper way to apply the coil cleaners. So, they get a demonstration rather than laying product out on a table do a show and tell. We actually like to demonstrate.
Right, right. Well, AHR is going to be in Atlanta next year, and I'm going to that one because it's about 8 hours away. So I'm assuming you'll be there, right?
Already have a booth. Booths are already assigned always about a year in advance. Yeah, we're already signed up, ready to go. It's actually the only major trade show I do outside of, I've got one coming up in March, which is HVAC Excellence, which I really, really enjoy. It's an educators conference, and we get all the HVAC instructors from throughout the country. Just a really great group, very knowledgeable people. And
I'm glad to hear that you're going to be there because I'm definitely going to come meet you, and I look forward to that.
Stop by. Maybe we'll get you involved in demonstrating some product.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'll be there as well.
Well, John, let's talk about Nylog, because everybody, within the social media, and I think that had a big part of, at least for me, that's how I got introduced to Nylog. Gil, I don't know. Did you know about it before you got involved in the social media thing?
No, I had seen it, but I didn't know enough about it until social media and YouTube to start using it. And then it was like a godsend.
Right. So I know that I believe Nylog has it changed recently, because I know you had the red and the blue, red being for mineral and then blue being for POE. So just tell us whatever you want to tell us about Nylog.
Nylog came about because I was doing research on chemicals that would release oil from surfaces. And I ran across this research that showed where oil was actually bonding strongly to surfaces. Actually, this is all done what they call well stimulation additives, where they would inject chemicals down into wells and try and break oil away from the rock and sand to re-stimulate oil wells so they can start sucking up more oil. And then there was this failed research to where they put this one stimulation additive down into the wells, and instead of releasing the soil, it caused the soil to bond to where they would have to close up the well and abandon it. And for some reason, it was some really bizarre chemistry. So I for some reason, I just got sidetracked into it and was experimenting with the chemistry in my lab. And a lot of the research for these well stimulation additives were done by a company called New York Life Oil and Gas. It was always abbreviated Nylog, New York Life Oil and Gas. And so when it came to naming the product, that's how I got the name, from a failed technology. But I was always taught in refrigeration that, the only thing you ever put on a gasket or thread was oil. So, and the reason being for that is, if it gets into the system, it can't hurt or contaminate, cause any problems. And we really didn't have in our trade a gasket thread sealant that was specific for the type of machines that we work on. Everything we were using were pipe dopes or sealants, adhesives from plumbing or automotive. So I set out to basically make something that was just specific for our trade, specific for the type of equipment that we work on. Came out with that like in 1993. We started going really big with automotive because they were applying Nylog red to a lot of the O-rings and gaskets, because in automotive, O-rings and gaskets are where they get all their leaks. Like you were saying, it wasn't until about 10 years ago when service techs like yourself and others out there started doing YouTube videos of using Nylog, showing how much they enjoyed working with it and how successful they were with the product, and that it wasn't creating leaks, especially stopping leaks on flare fittings for 410A mini splits. So when we started seeing those YouTube videos coming out, the bump in sales just went through the roof. To this day, we can barely keep up with the demand. especially in Asia, because I guess in Asia they don't know how to make flares. So
Well, see, and it's funny you say that because we've all talked about it. Like any kind of flare, especially on mini splits, we're always Nylogging it. But I've tried to explain to some of my guys, Nylog is an awesome product, but it doesn't fix a faulty flare. You still got to be able to flare correctly and then put Nylog on. You can't butcher your flare and be like, oh, well, I'll put some Nylog on it.
right, and you can't use it in place of a gasket. It's not a gasket substitute. You got to use a new gasket and apply it on both sides. But I've got people saying, no, I don't use a gasket anymore. I just slap Nylog on there, and I go, I don't think you should be doing that.
I've seen that the label has changed on the Nylog bottles. Now I bought so much Nylog. I still have the old label because I bought like both the red and blue in bulk. So I still have plenty to go around. I know, and I don't know if some of the other guys know, but blue can be used on both.
Correct. See, in the beginning, a lot of people didn't know that. When we came out with Nylog in 1993, all we had was the red because POE and 134A systems, they just weren't on the radar. They were projected to come into the industry, especially in automotive, but we just had the red version, what was just mineral oil, because all your systems out there were R12, R22. But when the POE oil started to come into play, we eventually developed the POE version of our Nylog Red. Actually, it was just a red label. When we came out with the POE version, we figured, well, we got to change the color of the label. So, and to make a difference, because a lot of people thought at the time that, if you mixed oils, something really bad was going to happen. And was a matter of, we can't really go out there and educate each tech one-on-one. So we'll just come out with two different versions until they figure out that, POE can be used just on any system. And there's no more R12 systems out there. So safely, when anybody says to me, well, which one do I use, the red or the blue? And I always just stick with the blue.
Well, let me ask you this, John, and I know I don't think that you offer any of these products now, but when it comes to like leak sealants and stuff, there's a lot of them out there, and a lot of them are garbage. There's only probably one product that is out that is halfway decent. Is that ever a market that you think that you would get into, or you kind of leave that alone?
No, none of this is groundbreaking, cutting edge technology. These products are all recycled from the 80s, 70s, and the reason you don't know about them because they were all on the automotive side. And it wasn't until they got kicked out of the automotive side that they started to grow roots into the HVAC side of the trade. And they cleaned up their marketing, and they came out with new so-called science of how they worked. I equate all those products as a chemical hack. And we all know and all been on jobs that are just nothing but hack work. So, and, you guys don't know what's in the products. You just read the advertisement and you read these testimonials. It sucks you into using the products. I can see why and how people get tempted to use them, but I would like to keep my company to a higher standard and not get involved, because when you go down that path, there's going to be this cliff and everyone's going to fall off, and I'm going to be nowhere near that cliff, and my company's not going to be associated with that type of product at all.
To be honest, and I'm glad that that's your answer, to be totally honest with you, Mr. John, because I hate those products. There's a bunch of them that, to me, if you got to find the leak and fix it. There's a couple of them out there that I've seen them take compressors out. They like coagulate inside the system. There is one out that I won't say the name of the company, that is oil based. There's been some circumstances where I've had to use it like on a system that's old. The people know it's going to die. They don't want to find the leak. Just one more summer kind of deal. But I agree. I think a lot of those products are just giving, customers and mechanics false hope. It's not doing what it says it's going to do.
Exactly. In fact, I started looking at these leak sealing products back in the 80s and then revisited it back in around 1999, 2000 when they started hitting on the HVAC side. I've tested them all in the lab, every one of them out there, even the ones that come from Europe. And I've tested them in the field. I've had some service techs that I work with here, and we've never seen them work either in the lab or in the field. We've seen some leaks slow down a bit, but then steadily reopen. To me, it's not a proven science. It's a garbage science. Eventually, people will come to realize that.
There's one that's out there that, and I'm just going to say the name. It's Super Seal. And I don't know all of like the chemistry and stuff like you do, but I know that this stuff has been in units. You see the sticker, I see the green goo coming out and messing up my guys' gauges, and compressors going bad.
Very popular here.
Yeah, and compressors going bad. So it's not just I don't know why. I've heard that stuff, like once any kind of moisture gets it like hardens. But that stuff is compressor killers. And like I said, I don't know how or why it does it, but I just know that happens, that it's taken out components inside the system.
Yeah, the whole function, this is how these leak stop products work. The one in particular you're talking about is a silicone, and it's being marketed by several other companies. And what it is, it's silicone, and it's dissolved in a solvent. Once you inject it into the system, silicone is not compatible with refrigerant or oil, and it turns into a solid material. Now, that's the basis of how all leak stops work. It's solid material traveling in the oil. The science of, it's going to travel with your oil, and once it sees a leak or gets to a leak site, it mixes with the air or moisture and hardens. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Because, number one, moisture does not get inside a leak. There's no way. If I apply bubble solution to a leak, that moisture is not going inside the leak, because your leak is like a volcano. And we've all done this. We've all tried to solder up joints, and maybe there's a little bit of pressure on the system that we didn't know about, and we can't get that leak to seal. It'll form a donut hole because there's maybe 1 or 2 pounds of pressure on there. That's because a leak is like a volcano. You'll never get that solder to close up that leak. I just couldn't, in my mind, figure out why technicians think that moisture goes inside a leak, and they made all this. I guess they wanted to believe it did. Well, that's how it works. That's how they say it works. But all these leak sealants will have some type of solid. Some will use different solid materials. So I ran across many, many years ago a leak sealant for air compressors, and it was air compressor oil, and it was spiked with clay. Clay, what's clay? Clay's dirt. So it's all these small particles of clay, and supposedly, the clay would travel with the oil and eventually get trapped inside a leak. Everyone thinks of a leak as a round hole. No, a leak is really not a round hole. It looks like a round hole from your perspective on the outside, but on the inside, that hole probably zigs and zags several times. So particles can get trapped inside there temporarily. Back in the 70s, there was a leak sealer that was mineral oil, and it was spiked with graphite. Science was sound. They said these small micronized particles of graphite will travel with your oil. Of course, your oil looks black, like it was the dirtiest burnout you ever saw. But who cares? If it stopped the leak, whatever. So the graphite would travel with the oil and eventually reach the leak site. And the graphite was all these different size particles, and it would get trapped inside the leak site and kind of like form a scab. That was a theory, but actually it's really sound science. The only problem was that graphite was electrically conductive. So within 3 to 6 months, you'd end up with a really, really nasty burnout. And with this leak sealer, as with all leak sealers, once you put it in a system, there's no way to get it out. It's everywhere. It's in the oil everywhere. I mean, the only remedy is to change out every component and start from scratch. Man, I ran into a few graphite systems back in the 70s. Awful, terrible to come to that customer, and say, hey, the last guy that worked on it, he put this stuff in there, and I said, there's no way I'm going to get it out. So big blow. I guess they didn't learn their lesson from back in the 70s, but they come out with the silicone type. Well, the silicone is not electrically conductive, at least, but it's still a fine particle, and the larger particles are going to get picked up by your dryer, because your dryer is going to filter out anything larger than 20 microns. So that's why they put in their literature, well, it only seals the really, really small leaks. That's because the dryer is removing all the large particles. The other solid particles are small and can only get trapped inside really small leaks. Otherwise, if it's too big of a leak, they just flow right through. So that's how they work. It's all about adding solids to the oil.
Well, for anybody out there in Facebook or that listens to the podcast or YouTube that doesn't believe me when I talked about that stop leak doesn't work, I think John just proved it, because he explained it way better than I could have. So I'm with you though, John, and I don't blame you for associating your company with a product like that or trying to create one. I don't blame you at all.
Yeah, we had an opportunity just about 6 or 7 months ago. A company came to us where they packaged the sealant in a hose, and you inject it, push it through with a little refrigerant into your system. And they were packaging it, and, they were, wanting us to buy it. And they said, listen, we package it. We put your name on it, buy 10, 25,000 at the time, get your price. And there you are. You're in the business of selling leak sealant. We go, no, thanks.
Yeah, I don't blame you, my friend. I don't blame you. But I kind of want to shift back over to the Nylog, because a lot of guys were in the Facebook group are really excited about that.
It's just gasket and thread sealant. That's not exciting. Leak detectors are exciting.
Yeah, very true.
And I saw Inficon. They're coming out with a new leak detector. It's in the prototype stages. It's measuring leaks in the parts per million. Yeah, it's going to cost like $2 or $3 grand for these things, but that's exciting. Gasket and thread sealant? Is that exciting to anybody? I don't know. I guess so.
Hey, man, guys love it, man. They really do. I love it. I love it. I've had nothing but success with it. Now, the ones that I have, like I said, I still have the original packet ones, the original labeled ones.
The original was in a syringe.
Oh, okay.
I packaged the original in a syringe. And what would happen is the guys would lose the caps off the syringe, and it would leak all over the toolbox and whatever. So we went to this twist open, twist close, which is basically an Elmer's glue bottle. But hey, it works for Elmer's. It works for us. And you can't lose the cap.
So it seems like the red, when you squeeze the bottle, it seems like the red flows better than the blue.
Really?
I mean, it seems like the red comes out of the bottle a little easier. And it's like, you got to be careful with it, because if you squeeze the bottle too hard, it'll just come blasting out of there. And the blue seems like you got to squeeze a little harder. I mean, that's my take on it. And that's what some of the guys have asked me to talk to you about, was because they've said the same thing. They feel like they have to squeeze the blue bottle a little harder to get it to flow.
Yeah, that's the difference in chemistry between a mineral oil and a POE. Mineral oil is a very, very broad range of hydrocarbons, where and it's going to be stretchier. It's going to be stickier to a little point. To me, it's going to be harder to break once you put it on. The blue is going to be a little bit higher in viscosity, but it's not going to have nearly as much stretch to it. So I would think the opposite, because we fill it here, and it's easier to fill the blue than it is to fill the red. We have to chop the red on each bottle, where the blue, we just have to just do a little chop to get it in the bottle.
So since blue is kind of universal, you could say.
Yeah.
Is red, are you still manufacturing red?
We still are. It's about a 10-to-1 ratio. We sell about 10 blues to every red. I've got ammonia guys that tell me that's all they want to use is the red.
Okay.
And I've got guys now working on propane and CO2 saying, no, we've checked it out. We like the red. So it's still going to be around for a while.
Yeah, because as far as what we do, residential or commercial HVAC, I've noticed that in the supply houses, we're not seeing the red anymore. We're seeing pretty much nothing but blue.
Yeah. Well, basically probably because, those supply houses, they have computerized history of sales. So when they go to restock, they're always going to restock more blue than red because the sales have been dwindling on that. But it still goes out the door here. Yeah, about 10-to-1. It used to be flipped the other way. Would like to see more people use the blue because it's easier for us just to produce one product than two. But as long as demand is there, and as long as we still have customers to demand the red, and there's no problem with using the red on a 410A or POE system, just as good. Not going to hurt a thing.
I'm glad you said that. I was about to ask you that. For everybody that, if you didn't hear that correct, he said you can use red on 410A POE.
Yeah, well, I always figured if the worst thing you get in a system, a POE system, is a little bit of mineral oil, then you're fine. That's like the whole flushing the line set. I think those flushes are garbage because they're solvent based. I rather just flow with nitrogen. And the worst thing, if I have a little bit of mineral oil left behind, I rather have that in there than some of this solvent get in my system. I mean, is that the right way of thinking?
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, one of the companies, it was actually Parker, came out with a refrigerant flushing compound, and they showed in their own documents where 10% of the flush remains in the system. But they were comparing it against their competitors where 25% of their flush was in the system. So they're trying to say that their flush is better because only 10% stayed behind. And I guess they kind of figured out that they didn't want people to know that 10% of the flush stays behind. So they retracted that literature. It was really kind of funny that they did that kind of comparison over their competitors.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it stays in there.
That's really good to know. I'm glad that he said that because I always said the same thing. I knew you weren't getting all that flush out of there. I'm glad John cleared that up.
Yeah, what happens is it gets entrained in any of the oil that's there. And once you get that into the oil, it doesn't vacuum out. You could pull down to 200 microns, but still that solvent, you're still going to have solvent slowly bubbling out of that oil, but it's not going to show up on your micron gauge. I remember back in the days when we used to have R11 as a flushing fluid, and that was really bad. I mean, if you flush a system with R11, you were there for days and days evacuating, trying to evaporate that off. I don't know why they ever used it in the first place. All this flushing frenzy came because that's what automotive technicians did. Automotive technicians were big time flushers. They flush everything.
I wish I could have talked to you back when the 410A thing was going on, because in 2008 or whenever it was when we started doing the 410A because of the phase out, man, they were scaring the hell out of us, man. We were changing line sets on every job, even though the lines were sized correctly. because oh, if you get it mixed, man, you're gonna burn that system up, and this and that, and man, I change line sets and when you're doing a change out, pulling a line set takes up a lot of the time on a job. I wish I would have talked to you a long time ago.
Yeah, the only thing you have to really worry about is it's not the compatibility between the oils or any opposing chemistries, is that the mineral oil isn't miscible or taken up in the refrigerant, such as an HFC. It's like oil and water. They don't mix. So let's say you have about 10% mineral oil in the system, that's not going to harm anything, because when you're looking at air conditioning compressors, they're running at about 3,500 RPMs. They're known as high velocity systems. And high velocity systems, you don't have to worry about oil return because of the rate at which they're pumping. So any mineral oil, it's not going to get stuck in your evaporator. It's going to be pushed through. Where you have to worry about mixing POE and mineral oil, if I got a low temp system out there, a walk-in, I'm using a Coplamatic. That Coplamatic's running only about 1,700 RPM. It's not a high velocity system. You can have some oil return problems there. But scroll compressors, 410A, air conditioning, no problem. Everything's coming back to the compressor.
Right. Makes sense to me, man. It really does. John, I think that's all the question. That's all I got for you. What about you, Gil?
I guess my last question is there anything? I mean, we know you've cornered some of the markets as far as like Nylog and Big Blu being the best. Is there anything in the works, like anything new that you're going to venture off in, or you're just going to stick to making the products you have better?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm still always continuing. We are, believe it or not, the number one chemical brand in Australia. And the reason for that is we were able to come up with an evaporator, a coil cleaner that actually eliminates all the odors. And we call it Viper Evap Plus. We first came out with it and tested it in Australia. Australia has been our biggest testing ground because they're using AC, especially in Northern Australia, year round, and their air conditioners are smelly. I mean, the high humidity and everything, smelly air conditioners. I mean, you walk into a market and you sniff and you go, what's that smell? And everyone just says, well, that's the smell of the air conditioner, because there's all kinds of growth going on in there. But we came out with an enzyme type evaporator coil cleaner that just takes that odor away. That has been a product that has really been on the move for us. So we looked to Australia as a testing ground, a proving ground for new products. And they want us to come out with odor neutralizer, which we have in the works. Basically, room air freshener, right? We looked at the blocks here that we have that are selling. They're using those in Australia. So we're coming out with some odor mitigating products. So that's the next area we're going into. Now, stuff like that, it only sells well in very, very high humidity areas, such as Louisiana, Florida. You wouldn't need it in Arizona. It's just too dry. Even in some places in California, our air conditioners don't get this biofilm growing in there. But for those markets, we're going to start providing some air odor neutralizers and blocks for air conditioning systems. We're testing everything out in Australia, and we're even testing what is the preferred scent to go along with the odor neutralization. Because you don't know if you're neutralizing odors unless you add a little scent to give the psychological satisfaction that, smells good in here now. So, but not a scent as to cover up odors, but a scent to accompany the odor neutralization process.
Yeah, I mean, this removing odors and indoor air quality and stuff. I mean, IAQ is getting huge. I mean, all that kind of stuff as far as smells. I mean, that's an area that people are definitely looking into a lot more now.
Yeah, so that's the next area we're going into.
Well, that's good. That's good stuff. I have one question I wanted to ask you, since you're the chemical guy. Some of my guys always ask me is, cleaning blower wheels. Obviously, you should, take it out and, clean it, but you can't always do that. I mean, is there a good product of yours that is a good, I mean, a lot of times we're just using coil cleaners and stuff like that, but you got to be careful when you're inside of a house, like a good product to be able to clean those and just brush off.
Yeah, that would be a trick because, you're talking about adding wet products and then the rinsing process and water and detergent getting down into return air plenums and or if you don't dry it out, you start up your motor and you just flood your motor with water and burn out the blower motor. I've done that a few times.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I figured it was something that was too good to be true.
Yeah, I don't have anything, hey, a good brush. Even at my own house, I was having a blower wheel problem, just that whiny, vibrating sound. And I finally, pulled the blower. I cleaned it, put it back in, still was whiny. So I time for a new blower wheel.
Yeah, well, I guess my whole reason asking that question is somebody I had talked to said, he's like, man, I found this spray I'm using to clean blower wheels and it's great. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, I can't imagine there's some magical spray. I mean, I've been doing this long enough that, I mean, like you said, you got to clean them with a brush. And so that's why I figured if there was something out there, I'm like, you're the man to ask.
If I had a magic spray and it knocked off all that dirt, and then when you start your blower up, it's just going to throw all that dirt into your VAP coil.
Then you can buy some of Refrigeration Technologies coil cleaner.
Well, John, again, I want to thank you. For me, it was an honor and a pleasure to speak to you.
Yeah, I've been waiting too because I started watching service tech videos a while back, and I think I subscribed to your channel and I subscribed to a bunch of other channels, and I'm glad to come on here because I know I saw you out in the field and you were using some of my products and saying really nice things about my products. So really happy to be here and kind of just reciprocate with any knowledge I can at any time.
Absolutely. And the fact that you subscribe to me and watch my stuff, I appreciate that. It was an honor and a pleasure to speak to you, and you're more than welcome to come back anytime. You just hit me up if you got something new you want to talk about. You're more than welcome to come back anytime, my friend.
Yeah, we can go into some leak detection, leak prevention, things I was good at out in the field. Cleaning is, that was, that's part of the job, but it's not part of the job I enjoyed doing,
Right.
What I enjoyed doing was, hey man, trying to figure out what's wrong with this system, diagnostics and servicing,
Right.
Cleaning was like, oh man, but it's part of the job.
It is. It definitely is. Well, John, thank you again, buddy.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Thanks again for listening to us here on the HVAC After Dark podcast. Me and John would like to thank you guys so much for your support. Don't forget, you can check us out and download the podcast on iTunes, Podcast Addict, and Stitcher for all your Android needs.
And don't forget, you can like us on Facebook at the HVAC After Dark Facebook page. Also, click the Big Blue sign up button to sign up on the HVAC After Dark email list. Being on the email list will enter you for giveaways. We do some giveaways for people that are strictly on the email list. And if you're in the trade, you're affiliated with the HVAC industry, you can join the HVAC After Dark Facebook group. Just search HVAC After Dark, request to join, and answer the question. And also, don't forget about our discount code at TrueTech Tools. When you shop at TrueTech Tools, when you check out, enter coupon code After Dark for 8% off of your total order. And that'll do it for this week. Say goodbye, Gil.
Goodbye, Gil.